All right, so this is going to be a little bit unscripted, but I wanted to talk about this while it's still fresh in my mind. And this all came up because I recently had a wonderful conversation with this person who had a lot of great observations about Hawaii, many of which I totally agree with, but they felt like they could never share that because they're not from here. And if they ever brought it up, they would be dismissed because, well, you just moved here, or you're not from here, you never graduate from here. So yeah, you don't really have any say into how things are. Some people say that even I'm not allowed to talk about Hawaii because I'm not Native Hawaiian, or because I went away to the mainland, and so that somehow washes away any localness I may have had. And of course, I don't really understand that thinking, but I do want to sort of walk through the steps and sort of have this bigger discussion on who can really talk about Hawaii, and maybe the reasoning why. So let's start off with, you can only talk about Hawaii if you're Native Hawaiian. Now, I understand the historical context of this, that, oh, it should just be Native Hawaiians talking about Hawaii, critiquing Hawaii, criticizing Hawaii, talking about the ways of life here as they are today, not back when they were just Native Hawaiians here, but I'm talking about contemporary today times. I understand where that perspective may come from, but I would respectfully disagree with that sentiment. Now, born and raised here, I consider Hawaii my home. I have a lot of family here. I'm back at least 5 generations of Japanese Americans who have lived in Hawaii. And by comparison, that's not the same as someone who is Native Hawaiian, who has generations of people. But I don't think that disqualifies someone like me from talking about this place as being non-Native Hawaiian. Now, of course, there's going to be issues where, yeah, maybe I don't quite understand where that's coming from. And so for those issues, I would defer to someone who is an expertise. But when we're talking about life here in Hawaii as of today and just general observations, I don't know if we can just limit the perspective to those who are just Native Hawaiian and to elevate that position above all else. When we're talking about Hawaii today, we're talking about a mix of people. We love bragging about how we're the melting pot, right? And everybody is sort of mixed, and so it makes everyone sort of the minority in that sense. And that's what I think is more reflective of this culture, that a lot of different people can feel comfortable speaking up and sort of saying what they feel. Now, whether those are valid points or not, you have to judge that based on, I would hope, what the reasoning is behind those arguments, behind what it is that they actually think or believe, and not just because of their blood quantum. And so for me, just on principle, I don't think that the only perspective is the Native Hawaiian perspective. That's a perspective here in Hawaii, just like there is the local perspective, which is one that I try to present, having been born and raised here, and I am considered a local. And then there's also a recent visitor, or I guess people call them transplants, but people who recently moved to Hawaii, there's that perspective. And then there's the tourist perspective. There's all of these different perspectives. And I would say that in a collective discussion about Hawaii, they all have seats at the table. There's not anyone valued necessarily above, especially when it comes to just based on someone's background, their race. Again, in the context of Hawaii today, I feel like other opinions from people with different backgrounds, they can add a lot to the conversation. Okay, now let's talk about only locals can talk about Hawaii, right? So we're just saying that you got to be local if you like talk about Hawaii. If you are not local, then why are you talking about Hawaii, right? Like that perspective, and trying to sort of unravel that point of view. For me, I would say growing up, that was probably my perspective as I was a young kid growing up here in Hawaii, because yeah, why are you talking about Hawaii for? Your opinion doesn't matter because this is my house, like my home, this is where I live. And why are you coming in? You just got here like, what, a week ago or a year ago, and now you're talking about all this stuff? Like, no, we're just going to ignore you. I understand that perspective growing up. But I can just say for myself, going to the mainland and then coming back totally changed my perspective. But when we talk about local, what does that actually mean? And I made a video about this. Like, you got to grow up here. You got to graduate from high school here. You got to live here for so many years. What exactly counts as being a local? And that term is so problematic that if one were to only limit conversations, having any validity from sources of people who are local, then you're going to run into all kinds of qualification issues, which I think limits that type of thinking. If you're only thinking that only locals should provide a perspective or be allowed to talk about Hawaii, especially in maybe more critical ways, then I just don't buy that either. If we only took local opinions, whatever that may mean to me or to you out there, I think we're somewhat limiting ourselves as well. I hope that we're not so closed-minded that we only want to listen to locals. I think there's a lot of great ideas coming from outside, but because they're not local and they're not from someone who is local, they get ignored. And so yes, I value the local perspective. That's what this channel is really built on, providing a local's perspective, one local's perspective on life here in Hawaii. But it is not the only local perspective. And I don't view my position as a local voice above any other perspective. I hope it doesn't come across that way in these videos, but I'm really not elevating my position. Any comments or any reactions to whatever it is I say, whether they come from a local perspective or they come from outside of Hawaii, I would never dismiss a perspective, an opinion, just on the basis of, oh, well, you're not from here, so why are you talking? And so where does that leave us now? To this third position, someone who is not from Hawaii, who has lived here. And I think this position becomes very tricky, and it's tough to navigate this position in relation to especially the other two positions of being Native Hawaiian and being local. It's this third position where let's say you're not from Hawaii, but you move here and you live here for X amount of years. It could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, it could be 40 years. But you're not quite a local because for whatever reason, you don't qualify as a local, not born and raised, didn't graduate from here, all this other stuff. So you're not considered a local, but you still have opinions. And it's interesting because these opinions, I think oftentimes they'll come across as like being very critical, right, of Hawaii. And for local people who receive that, right, it kind of filters down to them and they receive these words. Sometimes it can come across as like very personal attacks because these people are talking about Hawaii, they're talking about the culture, and through the string of spider webs and intertwinings, it gets down to the personal level and it hurts. And I think that tends to happen when your identity is so rooted in like the local culture, which is a great thing on one hand, but on the other hand, I think it become a little distracting. And for me, I found that the best way to prevent that from happening or to stop that from happening is to live abroad, to live away from Hawaii, to kind of rip that identity so hard so that you can be proud that you're from Hawaii, right? But that your identity is not so wrapped up in Hawaii, where if someone comments on Hawaii, maybe not favorably, right? Like, oh, why is Hawaii like this? Like, why on Oahu do all of the on-ramps, why are the on-ramps before the off-ramps? That creates so much traffic, right? Like if you brought that up from this perspective of like not a local, but you just lived here for a while, like some people might think, oh, if you don't like it, then leave, right? Like that cannot be our response, especially as locals. Like that shouldn't be our response to people who are just bringing up something that is like, yeah, like I don't know why our infrastructure is like that. Like why are the schools a certain way? Why is the government a certain way? Why is, certain things about the way that we do things, like why do we do it that way? Or better yet, I think there could be better ways to do it. Here's how. In a non-confrontational, I just want to change everything about Hawaii type of way. But I think sometimes we as locals, we take it like that because it almost seems like any critique, any discussion about Hawaii from an outside, what we would consider an outside perspective, it somehow reaches like this root to us, and it stings. And I don't know if it's we don't like it when people talk about how Hawaii is, but trust me, a lot of local people, we're not blind or oblivious to what's happening or certain ways of life. Oftentimes we just kind of tolerate it because we're just here on this island. But I think for most people who come from this position of they're not local, but they critique things or they comment on things, they're coming at it from a place that is trying to improve Hawaii and make it better for us locals. But sometimes we don't see that. There have been times when I've talked to people and they have wonderful ideas and they don't understand why nobody's listening to them. And I hear their ideas and I'm like, that's a great idea. I don't know why we don't do that. But for whatever reason, we don't. And for them to be in that position, it must be really sad. They're not trying to change the world. They're not trying to make it so that, oh, we can wear slippers in the house. Like that's always going to be a thing. Slippers are not inside the house, right? You take them off, right? So not trying to change something so systemic as that to our culture. So like intertwined in the fibers of our local culture. They're not trying to do that. But they're just offering certain suggestions based on their experiences, based on things that they've seen elsewhere. Like, oh, if we did this, it might change things. And oftentimes they're met with so much resistance, or that they cannot speak. They're silenced because they feel like they're underqualified to speak up, or that they've been shut down too many times. And that's too bad. That's too bad on us. I like talking about local culture because I feel like I'm a part of it because I grew up in it, but I've also spent enough time away so that it's given me some perspective on the things that we do. And just because you offer a perspective, or criticism is even the wrong word, but just maybe a critique of something, does not mean that you hate everything about it. And it doesn't have to be mean-spirited. Sometimes people are so defensive. Sometimes people are they take it so personal. It hurts them for some reason. And I don't understand the why. But like I said, I think separation from Hawaii, living outside, it provides some of that perspective so that you can be absolutely proud to be from here. I am proud to be from Hawaii. It's on my shirt, right? From Hawaii. But if someone were to say something about Hawaii, I can listen to what they have to say. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of true. And it doesn't hurt my feelings, right? It doesn't hurt my feelings. Because I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Why do we do it that way? This is sort of what comedy is supposed to be built on, but I think in a lot of respects we've lost that local comedy, to be able to step back, laugh at ourselves, look at the things that are kind of ridiculous, and just laugh at ourselves. You know, we kind of miss that, and I miss that personally. But I think it's okay to have this outside perspective and to be able to talk about Hawaii. And quickly, without this video going too long, I want to talk about this other position of the tourist perspective. And oftentimes their perspective of Hawaii is very different because they're here for the vacation experience. And so often what they'll comment on is, you know, accommodations, beaches, you know, things like that. As a local, it's really easy to dismiss what they have to say because they only see a very small portion of Hawaii, a very marketed, curated. It's a different experience to what it's like to really be here. But I do think it's important to at least listen and to value that perspective as well, because they are our customers. They are our best marketing because they're going to go out and tell their friends. And we can show all the ads and film all the TV shows and movies we want over here. But the reality is, if they go back and tell their friends they had a great time, this is what Hawaii was really like for me. I love the service. I love the you know, the beautiful beaches. The air was so nice, so clean. That's our best way to get repeat people to come back, but also to get their friends to all come and visit us as well. So I think there's a lot of value there in what they have to say about Hawaii. And we shouldn't just dismiss them because they're transient, because they're just here for a little while and then they'll leave and then they'll be replaced by more people, right? Like sometimes we can get jaded because of the whole tourism industry machine, right? It's just, oh, well, welcome. And then they're gone after 2 days and, oh, welcome. Or you're driving the trolley and then, oh, here's the people. And you're just kind of going through the motions of all the things. But I think it's important to remember that these people are paying sometimes a lot of money to be here. And what they think about Hawaii, they're going to go home. And they're going to tell their friends. And that's how they're going to view Hawaii. I wish there were more opportunities for them to hear like maybe more about what it's like. I mean, they're going to get the whole tourism spiel, but like really what, like local life is like here. And I hope that these videos maybe can help that. They're not, I'm not here to promote any tourism stuff here, but like, I hope they understand that it's more than just like the theme park, Hawaii, they're visiting, right? And I hope to provide that perspective, because I don't know how often they're gonna talk to like local people, you know, as they go out and do all the touristy stuff. Probably not too much, but I still think that that's very important. All the messages that they may be receiving online from other sources, it may be sensationalized, it may be romanticized, and in marketing, that's okay. But I hope that they understand, like, they're regular people, Americans, like living here, working, raising families. We're just getting along in life. And so if they really want to know what Hawaii is like, a lot of our issues, things like that, you can always just talk to somebody, and I'm sure they'd love to tell you. As we're talking about Hawaii, sort of meta here, as we talk about talking about Hawaii, I think there's room for a whole cast of people, a whole vast number of experiences. And we shouldn't limit ourselves to just this opinion. This goes here, then this opinion is second, and then this one third, and fourth. Because once we start creating this hierarchy of who is qualified to talk about Hawaii, boy, I think that's real dangerous. But I'd love to hear what you have to think about this, because discussion is more important to me than being right. Thanks for watching, and aloha.
Hello.